And we are here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. Also, please like and share this video so we can help the podcast grow. And please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Lopes Goes Last podcast on Facebook and at Lopes Goes Last on Twitter. Links to those will be down in the description below. So another week, another podcast, and another bit of a weird one, I must say. Not a ton to talk about again, but I am going to make it happen for you guys. There's two things. Yes, that's it. Just two that I want to talk about for you guys this week, so this might be short and sweet for all of you and for me as well. First thing I want to talk about this week is going to be the World Baseball Classic that is coming up here in just a few days. Today is March 2nd, so that means in 5 days' time, the World Baseball Classic will kick off all around the world. For those of you who do not know what the World Baseball Classic is, please, I beg you, if you have any interest in baseball whatsoever, watch the World Baseball Classic, or at least watch a game or two as it goes along. Because, I'll tell you from experience, having played baseball all around this great country of ours, having gone to many, many middle schools, high schools, junior colleges, regular colleges, whatever, 4-year universities, 2-year universities, all around this place, having played in JetBlue Park in Fort Myers, Florida, which is basically Florida Fenway, having played in the Minnesota Twins Stadium. There's, many, many places, having played in the old Los Angeles Dodgers stomping grounds, or spring training stomping grounds anyways, in Florida. Having been all around this great country playing baseball, and having seen all different kinds of baseball, from all different walks of life, there has not ever been a kind of baseball like the World Baseball Classic. I'm so happy that they started doing it, because for those of you who do not know what the World Baseball Classic is, have no idea what I'm talking about, it is essentially the Olympics of baseball. Now, I personally think that it is better than the Olympics, and I know that's probably very controversial for some people, but the World Baseball Classic is just special. There's something about the World Baseball Classic that just makes it stand out. And what it is energy and pride of country. Now, oftentimes people say, oh, we're just playing for pride as an insult. And you know what? So have I. I've heard it. I've seen it. And sometimes it can be taken in the wrong context. But in this context, playing for pride and playing for the flag that you represent, no matter what that flag is, it is the most beautiful and pure form of baseball. The energy that the players have as compared to when they're playing just normally for their jobs is palpable. It's different. You can tell. And you can also tell by the fans that are in attendance. They are much more rowdy than a normal baseball game would be. And so that energy is carried from the second the game starts, probably even before the game starts, all the way until well after the game ends. For every second, whether there hasn't been a run scored in 5 innings, or whether there's been 15 scored in those same 5 innings, it doesn't matter. The energy is the same. And it is so wonderful to see so many amazing players from all around the world represent their country in the way that they know how, and get an opportunity on a national stage, no matter where you are from, to represent and to show the world what you can do. Now, the World Baseball Classic is also amazing because you get to see the best baseball players from all around the world, not just the MLB, although there are plenty of MLB players for sure, but you get to see players from countries that you've never even heard of. You get to see players that, while maybe they are the second or third best pitcher on their own team in the MLB, they may be the ace of the Netherlands pitching staff, and they have one of the best World Baseball Classic performances of the entire, whatever you would call this, series, or I guess classic, right? That'd probably be the best way to put it. But, and you get to see stars being made. I'll tell you, I had no idea who the heck Seth Lugo was until the last World Baseball Classic. And then for a couple of years, he was one of the best relievers in baseball for the Mets. There's so many times where you'll watch somebody and you'll think, who the heck is this? Never heard of this person. And they show out during the World Baseball Classic, and it's great to see. Now, in terms of what I think might or might not happen, this is one of those tournaments, let's call it a tournament, that I don't really care who wins. Now, obviously, I want the United States to win, if I had to choose, because, from here, land of the free, home of the brave, and all that. But I just love watching great sports. That is just something that I truly believe in for all sports, all levels. And I am just a fan of watching amazing baseball. So when the United States won in 2017, I believe the last one was, it was great. It was an icing on the cake for a beautiful World Baseball Classic, for a beautiful few weeks of baseball that I got to witness. But I didn't care if they had won in the end. It wouldn't have mattered that much to me. The fact is I got to see the best baseball I've ever seen played at a passion and at a level and at a pace that I have not seen before. Especially when you're watching all these MLB players, you're thinking, man, where is this passion when they're playing for the Cubs or the Cardinals or the Red Sox or the Yankees or whoever? So it's a beautiful thing to see. And so, again, I urge all of you out there watching on YouTube, if you have not seen the World Baseball Classic, tune in this year, because it only comes around once every few years. So watch it. Even if it's just for a couple of innings, just see what I mean. Just kind of get the vibe of it. Just get the feeling that everybody who watches already has. So, what do I think is going to happen? Well, as far as I'm concerned, even though there are many great teams and many, many great players during this World Baseball Classic, I think it is going to come down to a combination of 6 teams. Some combination of these 6 teams. The United States, Japan, Venezuela, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Now, Canada might be thrown in there as well because they have some great talent as well. But as far as I'm concerned, again, unless I'm forgetting somebody, I might be. I think it's going to come down to some combination of those 6 teams, barring some incredible Cinderella story that I cannot foresee right now. And the reason is because on those 6 teams, the majority of the MLB talent is going to be on and representing those countries. So for me, honestly, I think that it is going to be an absolute barn burner, especially early on, because unless I'm mistaken, which I very well could be, the World Baseball Classic has pools, much like the Olympics does, and much like the World Cup also has. And unless I'm mistaken, in one of the pools, I think it is Mexico, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico all in the same pool, and that's 4 of the 6 teams that I just mentioned. So, honestly, that's going to be an absolutely insane pool to come out of, especially because that means that some of those teams that I mentioned probably will not end up doing well. So, I just think, incredibly, that it is going to come down to some combination of one or more of those 4 countries that I just mentioned, and then obviously the United States and Japan. So, who do I think is going to win the World Baseball Classic? Like I said, I don't really necessarily care, but I guess I will go for the United States. I think it just makes sense on paper. They have one of the best, if not the best teams in this entire tournament just on paper. Now, obviously, there are a great many teams that also have fantastic teams on paper, such as the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Japan, just to name a couple. But I am going to go with the United States just because, you know what? I love the United States, and I hope that they win. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head if they name a World Baseball Classic MVP or something like that. They should if they don't, but let's just say for the sake they do. I think the pick is pretty obvious, and I think if Japan goes anywhere in this tournament, it's going to be Shohei Ohtani, right? It's got to be Shohei Ohtani. Of course it's going to be Shohei Ohtani. He's going to pitch, he's going to bat, he's going to do all sorts of amazing things for Japan. it's almost unfair, really. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody else in this entire tournament that's going to pitch at an unbelievably high level and hit at an unbelievably high level like Shohei Ohtani probably will in the World Baseball Classic. Now, earlier today, I believe, possibly yesterday, there was a story that came out saying that the Angels are not going to restrict Shohei Ohtani in any way in the World Baseball Classic, which I think is very, very nice of them. It's the least that they can do for destroying his and Mike Trout's career for the rest of it until they smarten up and they decide to leave LA. But I think that it's pretty unfair if Shohei Ohtani is going to be able to pitch at an elite level and hit at an elite level if there is some kind of MVP award for a very short tournament. If he turns in even just a fairly good performance, I feel like that's going to be an unfair advantage, barring some kind of absolutely immaculate game from another pitcher, or just a crazy tear by some batter where they're hitting a home run every other at bat and just something crazy like that. So I think that if they do give out awards for MVP for the World Baseball Classic, then I think Shohei Ohtani might just bring that sucker home, as far as I'm concerned. So, moving on. The last thing that I want to do today is I am going to give all of you my very first mock draft of the season. Now, it's not a full first round mock draft because I said last time, I gotta be honest, I'm not fully up to snuff right now as it comes to college prospects. But I feel very confident about giving you my top 10 mock draft right now. So that is what I'm going to do to, finish off the podcast. Like I told you, it's a very, very short episode this week. Not a whole lot to talk about as far as I'm concerned. So, pick number 1 is going to be... Wait a minute. The Indianapolis Colts, but the Colts don't have... listen, I'm going to be honest with you guys. How do I put this? Let me see. The Chicago Bears have approximately a 0% chance of staying at the number 1 pick. Now, obviously, it's not a 0% chance. I wish it was a 0% chance, because I swear on everything I love, the Chicago Bears stay at number 1 and pick Will Anderson, who I love as a prospect. I think he's the best player in this entire draft. But the Chicago Bears team as a whole, outside of Justin Fields, is poo. Poo, I tell you. They have virtually no talent at any other position. Now, I know that seems harsh, and I'm sure that I'm leaving some players out. But let's be honest with ourselves. Can anybody, just normal football fans, name 3 players outside of Justin Fields on the Chicago Bears? That's what I thought. So, for me, if the Chicago Bears decide to luck into the number 1 pick, know that they don't need a quarterback, and still stay and either draft a quarterback that they don't need or draft a defensive player that will not make a lick of difference for their team's success, when they could trade down a few spots and get 1 more first-round pick, maybe 2, hell, maybe even 3, and some other picks, then they're out of their minds, because that's what they need to do. They need to trade down. And guess what? As you can clearly see right here, the Houston Texans aren't the ones that are trading up either, because they shouldn't be trading up either, because their team is poo. And quite frankly, as much as Davis Mills has been okay, I don't know if he's your franchise guy. So quite frankly, I don't even know if you have quarterback figured out if you're the Houston Texans. But I am getting far too ahead of myself. Let's talk about this pick right here. Indianapolis Colts, yes, as you can clearly see, I have them trading up to the number 1 pick in the draft to take quarterback Bryce Young out of Alabama. Now, for me, I do not think Bryce Young is the best player in the draft. He might not even be the best quarterback in the draft. But for me and for the Indianapolis Colts, I think that he is the perfect fit for what they need over there. let's look at the history of the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, they had two of the best quarterbacks of a generation back-to-back in Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. For those of you who don't remember how good Andrew Luck is, I suggest you go back and watch some film because he was fantastic before he retired. The only reason he retired was because of offensive line was basically a wet paper bag. Anyways, the Indianapolis Colts, since Andrew Luck's retirement, have been a revolving door of one-year quarterbacks. Unreliable, and quarterbacks that either can't stay healthy or just don't play very well in big games or small games or any games for that matter. So, what does Bryce Young, if I can speak, what does Bryce Young bring to the table if you are the Indianapolis Colts? He solves the one-year problem because you finally spent a draft pick on a quarterback. He brings reliability. Just look at his track record at Alabama. He has one of, if not the very best track records in the history of that position at Alabama. And there have been some very, very good college quarterbacks and professional quarterbacks to come out of Alabama. Just look at the guy who made it to the Super Bowl this year in Jalen Hurts. Although he obviously went to Oklahoma, but beside the point. He's played in a lot of big games. And he has played at times without a ton of receiver talent around him, which is something that he is going to have to get used to in the NFL. Now, the Colts don't have the worst receiving core in the NFL, but they certainly don't have the best receiving core in the NFL. So as far as I'm concerned with what the Colts are looking for, what the Colts need, and for Bryce Young himself, if I'm Bryce Young, I'm hoping to everything that the Indianapolis Colts grab him. Because if he gets picked by the Bears, he's either not going to play or he's going to play and have no talent around him. If he gets drafted by the Texans, he's definitely going to play and have no talent around him. So he better hope that somebody drafts up or trades up to number 1 or number 2 and snags him. That's a little bit better of a team and gives him more of a chance. And here, I have the Indianapolis Colts grabbing him at number 1. Pick number 2. Yeah, that's not the Houston Texans because, as I said earlier, the Houston Texans should not draft at number 2 either. Now, we can all laugh. They should have had the number 1 pick. They had the number 1 pick all year long, and they screwed it up at the very end. Ha, 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 ha. We get it. But, you know what? They're still in a great spot. They can still trade down. They can still trade back. They can still get more picks, and they can still try, at the very least, and build that roster out of literally nothing because that roster is awful. Okay, so I have Seattle Seahawks trading up here to take C.J. Stroud. Now, I know, Geno Smith. He was a Pro Bowler. I understand. He was fantastic this year. He was a revelation. One of the best comeback stories I have ever seen in the NFL. A guy who was completely counted out. Honestly, no offense to him, but completely forgotten about by most NFL fans. When I heard that Geno Smith was starting over Drew Lock for the Seahawks, I was like, wow, they can't even... Drew Lock is so bad, he can't even beat out a guy who hasn't been a starting quarterback in the NFL for 10 years for their job. That's pretty bad. But obviously, the Seahawks were correct because, wow, Geno Smith, what a resurgence. Super awesome to see. So I get it. Maybe you're hesitant to take a quarterback. But I think Seattle should take a quarterback. And you know what? If they were to stay at, I think it would be pick 5, maybe pick 7. I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll see it as we get along here, obviously. But whatever their pick is, if they stay, they may be able to take a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson later on. Guys that are more developmental quarterbacks. I could definitely see Anthony Richardson being the guy that gets taken, by the Seahawks if they do decide to stay put. But for this mock draft, I think that Seattle should trade up. They should get C.J. Stroud because, for me, even if he doesn't start year 1, I don't know how sustainable this Geno Smith run is going to be or how long it's going to be, quite frankly. He's not 25. I believe he's 32, 33, somewhere around there. He's not young, guys. So how much longer can you think he's going to get better and better and better? And C.J. Stroud, he's in a great position in Seattle. It's a great organization with a great head coach that knows what it's like to have to rally around a young quarterback. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if C.J. Stroud, if he got drafted, if he played anyway, because Russell Wilson beat out a couple of veterans on the Seahawks that weren't doing too bad, and look what happened to him. He's terrible for the Broncos now. And that's all that ever happened. He didn't do anything else. Just kidding. He's obviously one of the best quarterbacks of the last decade. So, I think this is a perfect fit for CJ Stroud, and I think if the Seahawks have the opportunity and think highly enough of the quarterback class this year to go over Geno Smith, even as a development project, I think this is best case scenario for them, picking CJ Stroud, quarterback out of the Ohio State University at number 2. Number 3, Arizona Cardinals first pick to stay put, and I have them going Will Anderson. Essentially, he's going to be that Chandler Jones replacement. They've lost a lot of pass rushers. They've lost a lot of gusto on that defensive side of the ball, and they need to start rebuilding. I wouldn't be against a trade down here if I were the Cardinals either, but I think that you should sell off some of your parts at this point and trade for more draft picks rather than selling your draft picks to trade for more draft picks because, teams are in two different positions, and I think Kyler Murray right now, I think he has to be your guy for at least the next year because you spent the number 1 pick on him, and you've got to try and build some offensive weapons around him, even though you kind of already have. The Cardinals are in such a weird position. They really, really are. I don't really know what to think about where they should go. So this is a weird one for me. But as I said earlier, Will Anderson, I think, is the best player in the draft. And I think that he will be a stud pass rusher for years to come. And I think that Arizona would be very, very happy to get him at 3. Certainly, the more value would be if you were able to fall to 4 or even to 5. But I think that the Cardinals would be happy to take him at 3. And I think it's probably the most likely scenario, barring the Chicago Bears staying at 1, which would just kill me. Oh my God, I hope that doesn't happen. So yeah, for me, again, or you never know. Maybe somebody trades up and drafts him, which I don't think would be the best idea because I feel like, especially if you are the Cardinals and you want to trade up, I think you could still get him at 3. You should just wait it out and see. So I have Will Anderson going to the Cardinals at 3. Number 4, Jalen Carter. So this is a tough one. The Georgia defensive tackle earlier today, like maybe a few hours ago, turned himself in. He actually, I believe he turned himself in on some kind of fatal car crash charges or something like that in connection to a fatal car crash. I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm going to be honest with you. But what I do know is that we don't really know how these things will affect the draft process. We've seen guys that something like this happens and it doesn't affect their draft stock at all. We've seen guys do this and not get drafted at all. So it's one of those things that, you just never really know. Now, would I be shocked if Jalen Carter drops to the middle of the first round, maybe even the end of the first round because of all of this? No, I wouldn't. But for me personally, Jalen Carter is an animal. And I think that he, you know what? I'm going to be honest. When I was doing this, I really had to think. I'm like, should I keep him at 4? Should I go somewhere else? And I actually had a backup plan. I had this whole thing in my head, but you know what? I just feel like Jalen Carter. Let me look right in the camera. Jalen Carter just feels like a Chicago Bear, doesn't he? Doesn't he? I mean, doesn't just the way he plays, the name, the way that it would look on the back of his jersey. He just feels like a Chicago Bear to me. I don't know what it is, but he just feels like a bear. So I'm going to go with Jalen Carter at number 4. I'm going to stick to it. Will this happen? Probably not, because unfortunately, I think that at this point, his draft stock is probably going to fall. And you know what? If he did something horrible, again, I don't know anything about it. If he did do something horrible, then he deserves to have his draft stock plummet. But for this, I'm going to say he stays here at number 4 because, again, I just feel like he's a Chicago Bear. He just feels like a bear to me. That's just how I feel. Pick number 5, the Houston Texans trading back from 2 with the Seattle Seahawks to pick number 5, and they still draft a quarterback. Yes, I know. I don't think that the Texans need a quarterback, but at this particular point, I don't really know what you do if you're the Texans. Both of the best defensive players are off the board at this point. I think if you tried to take another defensive player at 5, it wouldn't really make much difference, and it would be a little bit of a reach. So, what do? You take what I consider to be the best player available at this point in quarterback Will Levis out of Kentucky. And if you still are a little bit lukewarm on Davis Mills, then guess what? You don't have to start Will Levis right away. He can sit the bench because Will Levis is a project quarterback. He is a prospect through and through. Raw talent, raw arm ability, raw, running ability, but not a lot of accuracy, not a lot of weapons around him, so not a lot of great stats, not really running a big-time pro-style offense. None of those things are working for Will Levis right now. But he is an unbelievably good prospect, and he has a lot of tools that a lot of NFL scouts look for. And so, would I be shocked if the Houston Texans, in what they think is maybe need of a quarterback, trading back at number 2 and still getting a guy who very well could turn out to be the best quarterback in this class? I think that is a win on paper for the Texans. Would I be shocked if it didn't pan out? No. And would I be shocked if they went in a different direction? No. But for me, I think this is the best fit for the Texans at this spot if they were to trade with the Seahawks. I wouldn't even be surprised if they traded down from here again and, traded from 5 to, say, maybe I think it's 9 with the Panthers. I think the Panthers are at 9. Or heck, maybe the Eagles trade up from 10 and go to 5 and pick somebody and fantastic, Who knows? But I'm going to say they stick it out here at 5 and they pick Will Levis. Number 6, guard Tyree Wilson. So, Mr. Wilson, I don't know a whole lot about you, but I do know that everybody seems to be talking about you. All the scouts have fallen in love with you and your pass rushing ability. So, where should you go if you want a great head coach on a team that's up and coming, that somehow still has a high draft pick because they finagled the Rams, apparently. Although I think the Rams would probably take that trade considering they won a Super Bowl. But you got the Rams pick, who were awful this year. And you have another stud pass rusher on the other side, so you have a lot easier matchups for you. No better place than the Detroit Lions with Coach Dan Campbell and that fantastic defense over there in Detroit. They are really building a juggernaut over there, and I love it. You know what? I would love for the Detroit Lions with the number 6 pick, if Will Levis is still available, to take him. Because you know what? Jared Goff wasn't horrible last year. But his contract is the worst thing I have ever seen in anything in my life. So, I would love for them to be able to take a quarterback, but I think right here, with Will Levis off the board, I would say Anthony Richardson is a bit of a reach at this point, in my opinion. Now, we'll get to we'll get to Anthony. I almost said Will Anderson, and Anthony Richardson, excuse me, in a little bit. But just to kind of give you a little bit of a tidbit, I saw today that CBS Mock Draft had what team was it? I don't even know. It might have even been the Bears. I don't think it was the Bears. It was somebody that traded up with the Bears to take a quarterback, and they drafted Anthony Richardson at number 1, which, listen, he's a fine prospect. He's got a lot of raw ability, and he had a solid year at Florida. But he has very little accuracy, very little to offer as far as I can see right now. That doesn't mean he won't turn out to be a fantastic quarterback, because he has all the tools to. But right now, he's not a number 1 pick in the draft. It's just way too raw, way too much risk involved for me. So, with Will Levis gone, and in my opinion, Anthony Richardson being a bit of a reach, I'll take the best pass rusher left on the board if I were the Lions, and I'm sure Dan Campbell would not mind one bit. The LA Raiders taking another pretty good pass rusher in Myles Murphy. Listen, this is probably the most difficult pick for me because the Raiders need a lot of help in a lot of different areas. So I wouldn't be shocked if they traded this pick. In fact, I think that may very well be the smart thing to do. But I couldn't really find a team that may fit at this point that would trade up to take a quarterback that they couldn't get at their own pick, but it's too early to take a big-time wide receiver, so a team like, say, the Green Bay Packers probably wouldn't trade up all the way to 7 to take a guy that they could just trade up to 10 or 11 to get, possibly, maybe even later. So for me, I think the Raiders stand pat and take a fantastic pass rusher in Myles Murphy. So I think, honestly, this pick can go really in a whole lot of ways. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments section, because this is the one pick right here that I really was concerned about. I was like, I'm not really sure what I would do with this pick if I were the Raiders. Do I trade it? Do I take a pass rusher? Heck, do I take a quarterback? Do I take Anthony Richardson right here with Derek Carr off the table? I don't know, but we'll see what happens there. Pick number 8. Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go with Devon Witherspoon, or Devin, not Devon. I always do that whenever it's spelled like that. I'm so sorry. Devin Witherspoon, and where is he from? I'm blanking. Illinois. There it is. I was like, wow, why do I not know this? Out of Illinois. He's the best raw defensive back in the draft. He has the most tools, and quite frankly, he's just the best DB in the class. Let's all be honest with ourselves. Even though he was at Illinois, you could see it every single time he stepped on the field. He was a man amongst boys. So, Devin Witherspoon, I would love to see him paired with A.J. Terrell in that secondary for the Atlanta Falcons. They need a lot of help in a lot of areas. Another team that is worse than their draft pick, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how in the world they almost made the playoffs, and they need a lot of help in a lot of areas. But for me, I think that this is their best fit right now. Again, another team that I definitely could see taking a quarterback. But you took Desmond Ridder last year, and maybe he's your long-term bet at quarterback. So I'm going to stay away from that here. I'm going to go with Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois at pick number 8. Pick number 9, the Carolina Panthers. Another team that I really, really, really think might trade up to number 1 to take a Bryce Young or to take a CJ Stroud. And I think, if that mock draft, if I remember it correctly, I think they traded up to number 1 to draft Anthony Richardson. And here's what I'm saying. Why would you trade up to number 1 to draft Anthony Richardson if you could just stay put and draft him at number 9 like I have him going here? And it's very plausible, as you guys can see. There's logic for every single pick that I've had, other than maybe the Raiders one. That was a little difficult. But I think Anthony Richardson, again, he's a project quarterback. I don't think he's somebody that you could just plug and play right now and expect amazing results. Now, he could, but I don't really see that right now. I think he's much more raw. I think you would probably need to sign a veteran quarterback, maybe a Marcus Mariota like he did in Atlanta. He just got released yesterday or the day before at the time of this recording. So maybe you do that, and then you let Anthony Richardson sit for a year or two, and then you bring him in and see what you've got. So for me, Anthony Richardson at number 9. I think it's a great fit for the Panthers. Another team that needs a lot of help in a lot of different areas, but I think mainly they need a guy who can run that offense because they've got some weapons. You know, they've got some decent talent on both sides of the ball, really. But I think that you really need a captain of the ship. And if Anthony Richardson is as good as his potential could say he is, then this would be a steal for them at number 9. And last but not least, at number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles take Paris Johnson Jr., the tackle out of the Ohio State University. I definitely could see Peter Skoronski here. Now, for me, I think that, Paris Johnson and Peter Skoronski, tackle 1A, tackle 1B, in no particular order. I am an Ohio State fan, for those guys who do not know that. So for me, I've just seen more of Paris Johnson than I've seen of Peter Skoronski, be it that he's from Northwestern. They're not necessarily on television a whole lot. So for me, I've seen Paris Johnson roll dudes over. I've seen him play tackle for the Ohio State University and protect CJ Stroud's blind side for the last 2 years, and he's been nothing short of stupendous. And so I think, in my opinion, right now, he's probably tackle number 1 in this class. But I very much could see Peter Skoronski with a great, NFL combine, and, obviously, if all the measurables are there when he has his pro day, and all that, I can very much see him becoming tackle number 1, and I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. But right now, in my opinion, just seeing what I've seen, Paris Johnson is the best tackle in the class. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that what you saw in the Super Bowl was that, their defense needs a lot of help, for sure, but their defense is also very, very deep, and it's a little bit easier to find maybe, a backup linebacker than it is to find a franchise tackle. So, take your franchise tackle right here, pair him with that already very, very great offensive line, and move on and try and win another Super Bowl. How's that sound, Philly? Well, all right, guys. That's it. I know, very short podcast this week. Hope you guys enjoy it. And you know what? If you guys enjoy these shorter podcasts, why don't you guys let me know? Because I like to listen to you guys. By the way, thank you guys so much for 50 subscribers. I know it's not a lot. Really isn't. But I started with 0. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you next time.
Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.